Hello and welcome. I am live from Pelham's Wasteland, and today I have another episode of Pelham's Wasteland Reads for you guys. This time covering one book, although you're going to see two covers when I switch over. This is Space Marine by Ian Watson, which was originally published in 1993, apparently. Although the blurb says that it was written a fair bit earlier and then was not. Got didn't Nobody really went back and changed a lot of the stuff in it. But this is a novel about the Imperial Fists set in the Warhammer 40K universe, from a really kind of early iteration of that universe, which I think is really interesting. Warhammer 40K is something that I certainly enjoy, and I think a lot of the stuff in it is really cool and fun, and I have had fun with 40K related stuff historically, but I also think it's interesting the way that universe, and also to some degree the Warhammer fantasy world have, and maybe a little bit Age of Sigmar, although Age of Sigmar not as much, but especially in fantasy and 40K, the way that those universes and the kind of aesthetic of a lot of the stuff going on in the stories being told and in the lore and all that sort of stuff has changed over time. And this is a really interesting example of that, to me at least, because it is a sort of early vision of what the Space Marines, the Adeptus Astartes, are like in the 40K universe, and they are recognizably similar in a whole lot of ways, but also with some fairly significant, I guess I would say, more tonal differences than obvious like major lore differences. Um, so this particular story follows three characters, three young men from the hive world of Necromunda, who are selected for training as space marines. Basically, they all end up in the right room to be potentially selected to join the Imperial Guard, and there is a space marine there who asks, or I say asks, who has them tested for their potential as eventual Marines, and basically asks them if they want to do that and has them take the first of the various vows that they will take as part of their service to the Emperor of Mankind. And they end up doing that. And so the three brothers of Trazior Spire are these three characters. One of whom is probably our kind of primary protagonist, although we definitely see things from the other two characters. But Alexandro de Archibus, who comes from the highest level in the Hab City in um, on the planet Necromunda, the Trazior Spire. He's probably our primary protagonist, but then we have two other characters who come from successfully lower sections, the kind of middle industrial section, and then the lowest, gutter scum, the scumnick section at the bottom, that are like total, scavengers, and the people up higher up think of it as like a complete wasteland and all that sort of stuff. And so between the three of them, they also each have fairly different kind of character expectations about the world. Alexandro in particular, or Alexandro, sorry, Alexandro in particular has this assumption of his own connection to Rogel Dorn, the Primarch of the Imperial Fists. And it's not explicitly stated in the text, but it seems, I think, fairly obvious that this is an assumption of his kind of um, relatively upper class breeding, and his assumptions about his own kind of place in the world, and the idea that, of course, he is sort of picked out to be special because he's from the top, and they're all special up at the top, right? Um, Versus the kind of successively lower levels. You have the Yeri from the middle zone, who sees everything much more kind of mechanistically and is really concerned with the ideas of justice and kind of imperial justice, as opposed to the lawlessness of the parts of the galaxy outside of the empire, and that sort of conceptually related to his um, upbringing as a planned to be a member of this clan that works on all of this mechanical gear and is this really kind of engineering focused. And so his sense of the world is based on these logical engineered structures that interact with each other. And then the lowest, or the character that is from the lowest level, is Biff, and he has this very kind of tactical killer's mind in some ways, that he's really good at sort of looking through all of the chaotic things around and understanding sort of strategically what needs to be done, and the suggestion of his sort of survival instincts being honed in the harsh environment that he was originally in, and all of that. And it's really cool. It's neat the way that those characters have like actual characters that have to do with who they were before they were Marines, and that come out under stress. That's one of the other things, is that they all three of them get taught the standard Imperial Gothic, and the attempt to kind of civilize, especially the lower class characters, as part of their Marine training. And then in the stress of combat, they revert back to, Biff in particular, the lowest level scum one, has this very particular kind of degenerated slang filled speech, and the idea being that on base he sounds just like the rest of them in this kind of polished Imperial Gothic, very very kind of courteous and willing to put up with a lot of things, and speaks in a very precise manner. But then in their first experience of like the chaos of battle, um, he totally reverts back to the way he talked before, and has this kind of great moment of internal struggle where he is um, sort of struggling with himself about this reversion into what he sees as the kind of lower form, and him kind of struggling with the idea that it is less good to be like this, but also that in the chaos of battle he can't be busy thinking about how he's going to speak to his squad mates. He just needs to do it without even thinking, and so can't kind of use the extra mental focus it would take to try to speak in a polished way, compared to his kind of upbringing. And so there's a great sequence there. And yeah, so a lot of this story, a good probably third of it, is the transformation into Marines, with a lot of kind of body horror type stuff that's in there. That's pretty neat if you're into that kind of detailed information about the idea of the transformation of a regular human into an Adeptus Astartes. And then we have further sections that are their sort of experiences in battle. First against a kind of heretic splinter group, and then second against Tyranids. And so we see kind of both the shall we say regular life of Space Marines, when they are off duty and they are hanging out and not involved in shooting at aliens and or heretics or whatever else. And then we also see plenty of very like over the top exciting action with these characters. But I think what really to me sets this one apart from a lot of other 40K fiction, like I said, there's a great emphasis on body horror in here, the kind of horrifying transformation of these individuals, and especially this kind of gritty sense of the like reality that they interact with. So one of the things that they like to do is they scrimshander bones. They take especially the bones of the hands from fallen Marines and work all of this art carved into the bones, and that's just like part of how they express their connection with the chapter in a way that is, yeah, it's very kind of like gothic and grim and fascinating and really really feels evocative in some cool ways. There's some other elements. So one of the things that they get as part of their processing into Astartes Marines is that they get a lot of um, various upgrades to their digestive system, including an ability to have some psychic understanding of the things, the life of the things that they eat. And so the first time this happens, they have a feast where they have to basically eat meat from all these different animals, or in one case, a person, and understand what like the last moments of that being's life were like through their psychic connection. But then we get the much more intense scene where they have to take over a Titan, one of the huge walking dreadnoughts of 40k lore, and none of them know how to pilot a Titan, but the pilots know how to pilot a Titan, and they end up um, having to chomp down on pilot brain matter to learn very quickly how to pilot it, and it's awesome and horrifying and just so fascinatingly grim in all of these really interesting ways. And there's also a real like self-awareness to a lot of these characters, and a real kind of thematic awareness alongside that I think is really cool. There's a sequence when they are on the Tyranid ship and they're trying to understand these Tyranids, and they keep finding these like strange recombinated biological organisms that are clearly the material from something that they would recognize, an orc or a person even, that has been totally biologically transformed into something very different, often very kind of destructive to the original organism, of course. And there's a great sequence where one of them is sort of looking at what are essentially just searchlights, but they're humans that have been transformed into living searchlights, that all they do is they look around and cast light in the direction that they look. And one of our young space marines has this momentary realization of like, well, is this actually that different from what has been done to all of us to make us into space marines? Basically, is the type of biological transformation of a person that we're witnessing here done by the Tyranids that we don't really understand, but we definitely don't like, actually that substantially different to what has been done to all of me and all of my buddies who are space marines in order to turn us into these apex human warriors. And it's great. It's such an awesome sequence of like a level of awareness that you don't necessarily, I feel like, get in a lot of um, these type of 40k stories. Even though I haven't read that many, there's definitely plenty of Black Library 40k fiction that is still out there for me to read. But it is really, I think, just a really fascinating moment of, like I said, of self-awareness and of the kind of thematic awareness, and really like a very brief potential crisis of faith for this character as he tries to understand, like, hey, wait a second, is this actually any different, um, in a way that is definitely heretical and all that sort of stuff, but is also kind of a natural response to what's going on. So anyway, all of that said, I think this is like one of my favorite 40k books that I've read. Like I said, I haven't read that many 40k books, but this one is really good. I think it is a really like well told story about these characters going through these kind of, completely over the top experiences and taking a lot of those concepts seriously, right? The expression of like basically PTSD and things like that that happen in these characters is well done, and their um, you know mental and emotional struggles with trying to sort of reconcile their experiences being transformed into Astartes from their sort of starting regular human stock is really cool. And it's also like I said, it's, I think, a really very different flavor of what 40K was like when it was when this book was written compared to what 40K often feels like now. um, and it's, yeah, it's really neat. It's definitely, I can see why a lot of, why Games Workshop might want to move away from this particular flavor, because it is um, grim and gory, and there's some really insane stuff that goes on. But I also think there's something that has been lost in that transformation in some ways. That there's something really kind of interesting and unique that, to me, modern 40K feels almost kind of sanitized of, that is present in this particular type of expression of like what the 40K universe is. So yeah, Space Marine by Ian Watson. It's totally worth checking out. There's a modern digital copy that is really pretty easy to find. I think print copies are probably. I don't know if there's a reprint for print copies, although there might be. Um, but the digital copy is definitely easy to find and totally worth checking out if you are interested in what Space Marines were like in 1993 instead of what Space Marines are like in 2025, or are interested in both, right? Nothing wrong with being interested in both versions of that particular universe, and therefore, checking this sort of thing out. So, yeah, Ian Watson, Space Marine, Warhammer 40K. It says Heretic Tomes in the. I'll go back for a second. Heretic Tomes in the little stamp on it, which I think is really funny, um, just as a way to kind of signify the semi-canonical, the now semi-canonical state of a lot of the stuff in this book. Um, so anyway, yeah, that is going to do it for me for today. Hope you have enjoyed and hope you get a chance to read this book or one of the other books that I've been talking about, since I've been enjoying talking about books. But yeah, I've been live from Helm's Wasteland, and I will see you next time. Take care, everybody.